Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Cruz, Policy Analyst at CSG Justice Center. Before we begin, I have a couple of technical notes. If you encountered connection or audio problems during this webinar, please call WebEx Technical Support at 866-229-3239. We'll also post that number in the chat box on your screen. Now, unfortunately, there are some connection issues we may not be able to resolve during the webinar. However, we are recording today's webinar, and it will be posted on our website along with a copy of slides used in today's presentation. On today's webinar, we will review the Second Chance Act Comprehensive Community-Based Adult Reentry Program for Category 2 grant recipients. Throughout the webinar, we encourage you to submit questions in the Q&A box at the bottom right corner of your screen. We'll have time at the end of the webinar to address your questions, and we'll do our best to get through as many questions as possible. Joining me for today's webinar is Bethea, Policy Advisor for Corrections at Bureau of Justice Assistance, and Janet Lane, Senior Policy Analyst here at CSG Justice Center, one of the technical assistance providers for this grant. After brief introductions about our organizations, we'll review the fiscal year 2018 cohort of Category 2 grantees. We'll then provide an overview of the grant program and grantee expectations before moving over to the support available to you as Second Chance Act grantees, including technical assistance from the National Reentry Resource Center. And finally, we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. Please note that the contact information for each presenter will be posted at the end of the webinar. I'm now going to turn it over to Bethea to tell you a little bit about the Bureau of Justice Assistance. Andre?
Thank you, Jan. Congratulations to everyone. My name is Bethea. I am the Policy Advisor for Corrections and Reentry here at the Bureau of Justice Assistance within the U.S. Department of Justice. At the Bureau of Justice Assistance, our mission is to provide leadership and services in grant administration and criminal justice policy development to support local, state, and tribal justice strategies to achieve safer communities. This funding is provided through the Second Chance Act, which supports state, local, and tribal governments and nonprofit organizations in their work to reduce recidivism and improve outcomes for persons returning from incarceration. The Second Chance Act has supported over $300 million in reentry investments across the country.
Thank you, Andre. Now I'll tell you a little bit about who we are at the Council of State Governments CSG Justice Center. CSG Justice Center is a national nonprofit organization that serves policymakers at the local, state, and federal levels from all branches of government. Staff provides practical, nonpartisan advice and evidence-based, consensus-driven strategies to increase public safety and strengthen communities. Now, one of our major projects here at the CSG Justice Center is the National Reentry Resource Center, or NRC for short. Technical assistance for Second Chance Act grants is provided by the NRC, which is funded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance and managed by us here at the CSG Justice Center. The NRC has delivered TA to over 600 Second Chance Act grantees and provides individualized, intensive, and targeted TA, training, and distance learning to support SCA grantees. The NRC is continually adding new content and resources to our website, and we send out a monthly newsletter that provides information about the latest research, funding opportunities, distance learning events, and other news about reentry. To sign up for our newsletter, please visit the link on your screen after today's webinar. Now we'll move on to talk a little bit about you all, the 2018 Category 2 grantees. As recipients of this grant, you join a special family of over 200 nonprofit community-based organizations that have received over $100 million in Second Chance Act grant funding. This funding has supported various programs across the country in 47 states and the District of Columbia. These grant recipients stand out because the majority of Second Chance Act grants are only awarded to units of government, such as Department of Corrections or sheriff offices, And while many of them may subcontract with nonprofit organizations, only a few Second Chance Act grant programs, such as this one, are available directly to nonprofit agencies, including tribal and faith-based organizations. In addition to your grant program, we at CSG Justice Center also work with grantees who have received Second Chance Act funding from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, or OJJDP, to run mentoring programs for young adult parents. BJA and OJJDP together have invested over $100 million of Second Chance Act funds in over 200 community and faith-based organizations to run reentry programs that incorporate mentoring. This year, under Category 2, BJA has specifically targeted smaller and rural nonprofit organizations, and we're happy to welcome Delaware for the first time into that family. With well over $5.5 million in Second Chance Act funding, you can see across the map where this year's 11 grantees under Categories 2 also come from. With that, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate all of you on receiving this award. This grant is an exciting opportunity for community-based organizations like yours to support individuals returning from incarceration. While many of you may have similar aspects of your programs, may share similar aspects of your programs, you may also take different approaches to planning, implementing, and designing. One part of our technical assistance process will be connecting you to other grantees in your cohort to learn how different programs address similar challenges. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Andre to walk through the expectations and overview of this grant program.
Thank you, Jan. Again, I want to offer congratulations to each of you. Your organizations were selected from a large pool of applications. Welcome to the Second Chance Act community-based family. The goal of this program is to support community and faith-based organizations in developing and implementing comprehensive and collaborative programs that reduce recidivism of people who are returning or reentering communities after incarceration and are at medium to high risk of reoffending. We're going to unpack some of these expectations. Again, this is for the Category 2, the newly installed Category 2 section of this particular grant, where we're looking for you all to serve a minimum of 75 persons whom are medium to high risk of recidivating as identified from a validated risk assessment tool. These funds are only available to adults, so by our definition, age 18 or older and convicted as an adult. Also, the individuals must be incarcerated at the time of enrollment. It is incumbent and a mandate of solicitation that you have a memorandum of understanding or an agreement with a corrections agency as well as a law enforcement agency, the facility and the department that oversees it, and by the local law enforcement agency. Also, you're required to have an integration of a risk and needs assessment tool, albeit one that you're using or something that's established by your law enforcement or correction partners. Again, you're required to have a comprehensive case management system and to provide the baseline recidivism rate. If one is not particular to your jurisdiction, then by all means use whatever your state has provided for your specific target population. An evaluator is required on this particular solicitation. You do not bring the person in later in. You bring the person in at the beginning of the program to help plan to measure outcomes as well as conduct a program evaluation. It is imperative that you find someone who understands the work, the field, and is a little bit closer to recidivism measures. The planning phase is the first aspect of your grant. But before we start talking planning, let's lay it out. You will not begin any work using on this project until you receive a budget clearance from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. Again, you do not begin any of the work until you receive a budget clearance from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And then you can start to do the planning phase. Grantees will have approximately 180 days after the budget is cleared to complete the planning phase. Grantees will work with the National Reentry Resource Center, NRRC, who is your TA provider or technical assistance provider, to complete a planning and implementation guide. As Category 2 grantees, you will have access to $100,000 to complete the P&I guide. The P&I guide will be submitted and reviewed by BJA prior to moving to the implementation phase. During the planning phase, we all know that you want very competitive proposals, but now we have to build capacity for implementing the grant program. Some things could have changed inside of your jurisdictions, whether with you as an organization or with your partners. So we want to go back to the foundation and let's start to establish some baseline information for what we are to tackle. Many proposals have high hopes, but it's during this planning phase that you begin to unpack and start to talk about what is pragmatic, not just strengths of your own and your areas of improvement, but also for your partners. You want to flesh out ideas and refine concepts. Yes, they addressed in the proposal, but it's been some time since you submitted the proposal and actually receiving the funds. Also, we want to target technical assistance and identify themes across grantees. Now we're going to take some time to view the Planning and Implementation Guide, or P&I Guide. Not only is this a required deliverable for the planning phase of your grant, but this can also be a valuable tool for you and your technical assistance provider. The Planning and Implementation Guide is meant to flesh out the ideas put forth in your proposal and identify strengths and or areas for improvement. It will help to establish baseline information about the proposed program and help your technical assistance provider target their assistance. Once you get the key benefits of the guide, one is to really provide a single document that is a reference key of programmatic information. While further details may be laid out in program manuals and policy and procedure documents, the P&I Guide will be a good reference point for program staff and partners to grasp what the program is trying to accomplish. Please note, this will be a collaborative effort between you and your TA provider. You're going to walk through some exercises with the TA provider. You're going to review the exercises prior to the call. We want to be clear and concise, and if anything is unclear, please discuss it with your TA provider. It is also important to provide or develop documentation, especially for any MOUs or MOAs or policy, procedural, or training manuals that you may have that may get referenced in the guide. We need supporting documentation before that guide can be approved. As you begin completing the guide, you'll start flushing out how your program and your partners fit into the larger landscape in your area. You'll be able to assess what your needs are, what's going to be done during the planning phase, and what components are already in place. After identifying what parts of the program rely on your partners, you should begin to include them for parts of the guide that address their involvement in the program, such as your corrections agency, your evaluator, or even, to some degree, a service partner. Reaffirm your target population. No one says that you're nailed to what has been established in the proposal. There is some wiggle room. We just need to identify their needs, whether it's substance addiction, housing, transportation. Let's iron that all out during the P&I guide, during the planning phase. Understand how your services fit into the larger context of existing supports and resources in your jurisdiction. How are you tracking successes for your population and your program? It is essential that we continue to work together. We are all here to help you achieve impact.
Hi, my name is Janet Lane, and some of you will be assigned to me as your technical advisor. First of all, let me wish you the heartiest congratulations. I know that other people have already, of course, but I'm particularly excited to be assisting you in providing assistance, having been a project coordinator myself on 2 rural grants. I'm very familiar with the challenges and the rewards that come with more rural communities. And I would like to encourage you to have an open dialogue and with me and with your TA providers so that we can brainstorm strategies. Every program is valuable and we want you to be successful primarily because you are improving people's lives. The NRRC website can be extremely helpful to you and provide valuable information and highlights of other programs so that you can kind of get a glimpse at what other folks have been doing. Every grantee is assigned a technical assistance lead from the NRRC who will assist you in completing the P&I guide, supporting the development and implementation of the content of your program, helping you assess progress, and linking you with other grantees in the field to share successes and common challenges. Sort of a moral support, if you will. Though you will have a primary TA contact, we all work together as a team to draw on each other's area of expertise and stay in regular contact with BJA to coordinate our assistance to you. So these listed here are just some of the ways that we are going to help you. Our technical assistance can take on several forms. Each grantee will have monthly phone calls with their TA provider throughout the course of the grant. We also regularly host and distribute webinars and opportunities to interact with other grantees. In addition to this, based on the needs of your program, we will be able to provide subject matter expert trainings on a number of issues, including risk, needs, responsivity, gender responsiveness, the intersection of behavioral health and reentry, sustainability, and various other topics. Sometimes grantees will benefit from a site visit where TA providers, and in some cases consultants, work with the program staff on the ground to address specific changes. So now what happens? If you haven't done so already, please review the Second Chance Grantee General Orientation webinar. This webinar was presented to all Second Chance Act fiscal year 2018 grantees and covers key information from BJA regarding your grants management process, including reporting requirements. You can find this webinar at the NRRC website, and your TA provider can send you a link to the recording. Your TA providers should have reached out by now to set up your introductory calls. During your first call, you will have a chance to talk a little bit about your program and any changes that you anticipate from the original proposal. Your TA provider will also take this time to walk you through the process of the P&I guide, and then regular calls will be set up. If you have an unusual concern, please do not hesitate to reach out to your TA. Here are some pointers on what some of the most effective practices have been in the past. Be sure to have all relevant parties on the call. So I receive frequent emails or questions, who should be on this call? Certainly your coordinator. anybody you feel is a stakeholder in the process of your grant. Please be sure that your evaluator is at least on a quarterly basis, on the calls on a quarterly basis. Also, when it comes to filling out the guide, don't go it alone. This should be a collaborative effort, as Andre and Jan have said, and input from all partners and personnel will be crucial to completing the guide. Lastly, be sure all grant information is current. Any changes to the program or even points of contact or emails in official grant documents should be current. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask your TA provider, as we are here to help you navigate this process. And now let me turn us back over to Jan.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you, Andre. Also, the NRC has a variety of other resources your TA provider can connect you to, including information on reentry and employment, behavioral health, housing. We have an endless amount of material and resources we can help direct you to. In addition to NRC resources, there are valuable resources outside the NRC to be aware of. These include crimesolutions.gov and NREPP, which provide information on evidence-based practices and curricula. The National Mentoring Resource Center, also it's a project funded by OJDP that provides TA and support to mentoring programs, which I know most of, if not all of these grants have some form of mentoring as well. If you have any questions, please reach out to your TA provider for more information. At this time, we'll go ahead and take questions. Please remember to use the Q&A box on your screen to submit your questions. So we have one question coming in right now, and it says, came in already, where do we access the P&I guide template? So your TA provider will reach out to you to coordinate your first phone call, or probably has already done so. And at that time, they will during the first phone call, you guys will discuss the P&I guide and how the process looks like. And at some point, maybe about a week tops after that, you'll receive the actual guide, and then together you guys will work on completing that and tackling the exercises together. Just gonna wait for some more questions. So another question coming in, Andre, I believe this is for you, is actually two of them, pretty much the same one. When will we have our budget approved, or how long does it take to get budget approved?
Thank you so much for your question. There is no time frame that it takes. As you can imagine, the Bureau of Justice Assistance has a long line of budgets that have to be cleared, not just for BJA, but for the larger Office of Justice programs. I personally request your patience as we try to work together and make sure that all of the documentation are up to par. I encourage you all to reread your acceptance letters, that means the small print as well, to see what, in fact, information might be required of you. And that when you start to work with not just me, not just Jan or Janet, but also with Tracy Willis, that we'll all be in a predicament to help you go forward. This is not a fast process. Fiscal year started October 1, and again, we just request your patience as we try to work through not just particularly this grant program, but all of our grant programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Another question, how do we draw down the initial funds?
Again, thank you for your question. In reference down to your budget being cleared, there will be no availability of your initial $100,000 for this grant program. You will only have access after your budget has been cleared. Therefore, to my point earlier in the webinar, please do not attempt to start any work for these funds until you actually have them in your queue, and that is not possible until the budget has been cleared.
Thank you, Andre. We're just waiting for some more questions to come in. Okay, it doesn't seem like we're getting any more questions. Thank you to those who did submit some questions. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us on the webinar or your TA provider. So this concludes our webinar. Thanks again to Andre, Janet, our behind-the-scenes team here running the webinar, and to everyone who joined us today and submitted questions. Once posted on our website, your TA provider can direct you to the recording of this webinar. We will also have a PDF of all the slides presented today. Remember to sign up for our newsletter as well at cscjusticecenter.org/subscribe. Thank you all again and have a great day.